Okay, everyone, this is great. Let's go all the way in. We're all ready for Shabbos here, but it's not Shabbos yet in Los Angeles. Other places in the world, it's already Shabbos. Over here, we still have 45 minutes, so let's go. And let's complete the Key to Redemption episodes 8, class number 4, so that we come into Shabbos with these holy teachings and we blow away the darkness and reveal only the infinite light. Oh, it's incredible. Okay, so we're ready to go. I just want to dedicate this class to a boy named Lev, whose mom dedicated the class, anonymous, for a boy named Lev. May Hashem bench him with all the abundant blessings. Only the greatest. Okay. So, based on all that we had learned until now, how Hashem, this is a continuation to the class number 3, where we spoke about conquest of the land, not only from the level of the soul, and not only using the Torah as the Torah and the soul are already differentiated and specified and detailed to match the detail of the world, but really being able to lift, to conquer the world from the level of soul where we're all unified, we're all one, so that we can reveal the level of the Torah that is also unified. As we discussed in Torah, there are 2 levels, where each letter is an individual letter with its own features, its own character, its own specific light. And then the Torah, as all the letters come together to be one Torah. And as we also discussed that in Torah and mitzvahs, there are the mitzvahs of the Torah is where the Torah becomes more contained, defined, and specified to time and space. And then there is the Torah itself, which is more unified. It's all God's wisdom, and therefore we're not so caught up in one particular piece or another particular piece. We can sense the unity all over the Torah. Within Torah itself, we discussed the exoteric aspect of Torah is more detail specific because it's instructing us in particular actions, and then there is the inner part of the Torah that's where you can sense the inner light of God, where the subject matter is Hashem Himself. So that's the unity of Torah. Now we want to be able to conquer the land also from the level of unity. And we discussed that means so that we can reveal the transcendent light of God in the world. Now, by the way, just to connect, it's very important always to see that the Rebbe is revealing one idea through all these talks, one primary idea, how redemption is uncovering the light that's in the exile, in the world itself, to bring out its godly potential, its godly light. But in that itself, we learned to reveal the Aleph in Goyla. But in the Aleph itself, we learned that there's levels. There's the Aleph as the chief of the world. Then there is Aleph as Aleph means I will teach you, which is higher. And then there is Aleph as it means Pella. Pella means wonder, which means the infinite light. And even that to reveal it in the world. So that's what the same idea we're learning over here. Not only that we can conquer the land with the particular details of each tribe going into its own place, but we have all the tribal leaders together going into each place, so that we can open up that particular place to receive the godliness that is higher than the detail. And primarily that was the objective of Yeshua's spies, because over there it was only 2 of them, and they weren't at all highlighted their specific features. And all, as we discussed in class number 3, I'm not going to go over it. So now, based on this that we learned in last class, the Rebbe continues in chapter 12. A phenomenal idea. We might have to cut this class before I get to finish because it is coming closer to Shabbos. But this we find something phenomenal, is that when it comes to Yeshua's spies, look at this. You're joining my class on YouTube before Shabbos. So we still have 40 minutes. So sit down. Yeah, perfect. Good. So we have a live audience over here also, not only the live YouTube audience. So when Yeshua sent the spies, there were 2 of them. One of them is Kalev and one was Pinchas in the Haftorah. So Kalev, we understand why he was one of the spies that went, because he was one of the first group. So he would have all the precautions and know how to make sure that this mission would be successful. But the question is, why Pinchas? Now, what's the problem with Pinchas? Pinchas, you would think he's a perfect candidate. He's someone so loyal. But the question over here is from the tribe of Levi. As we mentioned earlier, the Levites didn't participate in the first conquest of the land of Israel. They didn't participate in the first, in Moshe's spies. There was one person from every tribe, but not from Shevet Levi. And why didn't we send someone from Shevet Levi? Because Levi is not getting a piece of the land. And we needed one from each tribe to represent that tribe's interest so that they can see how beautiful the land of Israel is. So each one needed, but Levi wasn't getting a piece. They were just given cities from each tribe donated to Shevet Levi, but they really inherently didn't conquer the land. If that's the case, why in Yeshua's spies, Yeshua's two agents that he sent to scout the land, we have one of them being a Levite, being a Kohen from the tribe of Levi, which doesn't have a relationship to the land. So the Rebbe gives a brilliant answer, and he says, and that is because the Talmud tells us in Tractate Baba Basra, the Talmud tells us that Eretz Yisrael in the future is going to be divided into 13 portions. Israel was divided last time we went into 12 portions. This time it's going to be divided into 13 portions. And that's because Shevet Levi is also going to get a portion of the land. What's going to be different in the time of the Geula, the time of the redemption? That Levi as well is going to be a participant. That means that the clergy people are also going to get a portion of the land. And the answer the Rebbe explains is very simple. The reason why the Levites did not participate did not get a portion of the land is because we don't want their heads to be on the earth. We want their heads to be devoted into higher worship. We need the people. We need some people that are leaders, that are higher, that are beyond. We don't want them to get their minds, caught up in the petty aspects of everyday living. So we leave it for the rest of the Jewish people because their job is to go down into the world to refine it and to elevate it. But the Shevet Levi, they have to be above it all. That's the purpose of the Levium. They're separate and they have no worries. All their food, their clothing, their possessions are all provided by the rest of the Jewish people. So we can have one group, one tribe that kind of acts as the spiritual mentors and priests and elevators of the rest of the Jewish people. But the Rambam emphasizes the main reason is we don't want their minds to become caught up in all the politics and all the stuff that everybody else is busy with. So the Rebbe says, but that's only today's days when everybody is busy. All the minds of the people are busy with petty matters. But when the Rambam describes the state of the humanity when Mashiach comes, is that all of the human race, definitely the Jewish people, but all of the human race are going to be occupied with only one thing, and that is to know God. That means the human mind is not going to be dragged in the ground. The human mind is going to be elevated. They're all going to be plugging in to researching and getting deeper and higher knowledge of Hashem. So there's no reason to segregate Levi and to keep them separated from everybody else, because everybody is already on a high level and everybody is engaged in what Shevet Levi is doing. So by giving them a piece of land amongst everyone else, it's not threatening their integrity, it's not threatening their holiness, it's not threatening their attachment to God, because earth has already become heaven in those days. The occupation of earth is going to be heavenly matters. So they can also participate and have a piece of earth. And that's the reason why they don't have to be, the main point is they don't have to be separated. However, on a deeper level, that's just simply why Shevet Levi is going to have a portion of Eretz Yisrael after Mashiach in the days of the Messianic era. Now let's take it, however, one step deeper. The deeper reason is because if we divide Israel into 12 portions, then what is sensed in the land of Israel is the different parts. We can sense the differentiation. This is the fields. Here are the orchards. Here is the coastal area. Is a different climate. You sense the division of the various different parts. Because if you remember, we spoke earlier that number 12 is the number that contains within itself all aspects of time and space. Because if we spoke that in a cube, you have 12 points of connection. Like a Rubik's Cube, we spoke that the corners, the sides where two sides attached, are 12 of them. Because time of space, so space is divided in 6 directions, but you want to connect each part with another one, you end up with what's called Yud Beis Grulei Alachs. So that represents the differentiation and the pieces. When you add number 13, what's number 13? By the way, in the secular world, 13 is considered a cursed number. So that's why people are terrified of number 13. They put it on buildings. You have on elevators. They don't have floor number 13. And in many airlines, you don't have row 13. People look at it as a bad omen. That's because the klipa, the unholy, is terrified of number 13. Because number 13 is the numeric value of echad, of oneness. Echad, one. The singular oneness that is the essence, the pulsating pulse of life, that is the energy in all the 12 different features, in all aspects of 12. The singular force that unifies the 12 tribes of Israel. So 13 is the numeric value of echad, oneness. So by having Shevet Levi, that is the heartbeat of the Jewish people, by having Shevet Levi also take part, and they also get a part of the land of Israel, what that changes the dynamic of the land. That even though you have a land with 12 different parts, by revealing the 13th part, and you're not noticing and sensing the division, what is dominating is the unity, the harmony, the oneness, which is the level that's higher. And that's because Israel is then facilitating a higher level of divinity, which is not divisible, which is not broken into different parts. The oneness of God is sensed in the land. Like the Talmud says in Masechtas Baba Basra, the Rebbe blows the cover on all these passages of the Talmud. He blows, meaning he reveals the depth of what it means. The Talmud says like this, that actually this is not stated in the Talmud, but this is stated in Ezekiel, in Yecheskel, where it describes the division of the land in the time of Mashiach. It says, Ve'ele machlokoisam ne'um Hashem. This is the division by the word of God, which means that the vision of the future is going to be God himself dividing the land. The earlier time, it was we dividing it, throwing lots in accordance to what Hashem said. But then it's going to be Hashem himself giving the land. Since it's coming from God, who God is the essence of oneness. So since the division is going to be divided by God, you're going to sense the unity in the division, where you won't sense the division. As a result of this, watch this spectacular idea. This gets me so excited. The Talmud says, hear this idea. Talmud says like this, not like the division of the past is going to be the division of the future. That same passage in the Talmud, Masechtas Baba Basra, adds, not like the division. In the past, a person who had a grain field didn't have an orchard. A person who had an orchard didn't have a grain field. That means everybody had a portion, and this was this and this was that. But la'olam haba, in the world to come, there will not be any single person that is not going to have mountain and lowlands and valley and everybody's going to have everything. How can everybody have everything? The answer is when the oneness, that's the source of everything, is revealed in every part, then every part has everything. This is this idea. This is the concept that in the division you find this, because when everything is connected to its quintessential source, which is God himself, that's beyond all the division, then even when you're looking at one specific part, everything is there. And that's because the Levites are going to join and the Levites are the godly people. So once you throw them into the mix, it changes the dynamic of the entire geography. It's the same country, the same land, the same divisions, but suddenly we find everything, and every little detail has everything in it. Obviously, this tells us so much about the science and of where the world is heading to when you uncover these levels. When God starts manifesting more in a revealed way, how it will change the aspects of, I'm sure physicists and people can take this to places where I have no idea. In any case, so what's the deeper idea? Why is it today? Why is it today that today, meaning in the past, even when we had the land of Israel, in the past, it was divided into 12 and not into 13. And Shevet Levi was not participating. And only in the future we're going to have 13. The answer is, it also has to do with the energy that was utilized in the conquest of the land. As we said before, it's the Jewish people activating their souls and administrating the Torah to the world, and that's how we uncover the godliness of the creation, the godliness that's within the world. Right? We said earlier there are three things over here. There is the conquered, that's the land. There's the conqueror. God sent Israel to conquer the land, which, as remember we spoke, the land of Israel is the nucleus of all of the world. Once Israel is uplifted to being a godly place, it means the entire world becomes uplifted to this godly level. And so there is the conquest, there is the conqueror, and there is the conquering force, the method that is being used in the conquest. Usually it would be weapons. In this case, it's the Torah that is administered to the world, and that's how we uncover the godliness. So the difference between the conquered land in the future from the conquered land in the past is the same land of Israel, and suddenly in every piece you'll have everything, and that's because we have a 13th tribe. That's because in the earlier service which we worked upon to elevate the world, we were only utilizing the part of our soul which is specified, which makes each and every one of us as an individual human being. We applied our individual particular talents to the task at hand, and that's how we did the purification. That's how we did the elevation. But when Mashiach comes, we're going to be elevated. And the elevation is going to be, we're going to come into contact with a much deeper part of our soul, the singular essence of our soul, which that part, we're not divisible. And that part, I am you and you are me, we're all one. It's the level of soul that is higher than the differentiation. And that will be, from that place, we will be operating in the conquest of the land. So, and also in the Torah, we're going to be utilizing the higher part of the Torah, the esoteric part of the Torah, not just the revealed part of the Torah where you can sense the differentiations, the pieces. Like we know in the last few hundred years, we're studying Hasidus. We're learning a much higher level of Torah, and we're revealing a much higher level of Torah in the world. And as we reveal a much deeper and a much higher level of Torah in the world, it uncovers in the world a much higher level of godliness, the singular divine presence that is higher than the division that reveals itself within the world. And in that manner, the result of it is going to be a different level of godliness that's revealed within the world. Now the Rebbe points out these two levels, that even in the days of Mashiach, you can see these two features. What we have accomplished as a result of our individuality, each person in their own part of the world that they needed to do, and what we accomplished as a result our unified force, higher than the details. Where do you see it? The verse promises that in the end of times, the Rambam, this is how the Rambam, the Maimonides, closes his book when he speaks about the future. He brings a verse in Isaiah, a verse in Yeshaya, where it says, there won't be any more violence in the world. The world will be filled with knowledge of God. Like the waters cover the sea. Just like when you go out to the ocean and you look at the sea, you see this. You don't see the ocean bed. You don't see the floor. All you see is ocean. The entire world will be submerged in godly knowledge. So the Rebbe says, let's pay attention closely to the first half of the verse versus the second half of the verse. First half of the verse says the world will be filled with knowledge of God. Second half says, like the ocean covers, like the waters cover the ocean. What's the difference between them? He says when you fill something, you're noticing the object that you're filling. And then if you have imagine you go into your house and you take out all your flower pots or all your vases and you fill each them with water. So what you're going to have, each one is going to be filled with a different amount of water because you have a whole bunch of different vases or for whatever. Like the different, some are bigger, some are smaller, some are wider, some are square, some are like. My wife has a whole collection of flower pots. So you have all these different ones, each one, which means that the content that is going in is in accordance to the container. But when we're talking about covering it, It's like this, like the ocean covers the ground. There you don't see the containers at all. I mean, certain parts of the ocean are miles deep. Certain parts are pretty close, but when you look at the ocean, you don't even see, because it's all one covering. And so this is the difference. When we say that the world will be filled, that means that the godliness, the inner divine energy that is particularized to each creature and each specific creation, that godliness of that particular creation is going to be visible, is going to be present, and the creature, a creation, is going to know its own divine energy. But that's what fills you according to your capacity. The second level is a much deeper level of divine consciousness will suddenly open up, in which all of existence will be unified in one powerful presence of an infinite being that is wrapping himself around and over all of existence, and then that will create this immense unity in all of creation. It won't cancel us, but it will create this immense unity in all of creation and all of the world. And that's a result of the higher level of service that's connected to the Levite conquest. That the Levium, who are higher people, will also be engaged in the conquering. And that's the way they're also going to have a portion in the land. That's why the Rebbe says, amazing thing, this is really wild. He says that when we know that Israel is going to be divided into now it's 12 and then it's going to be 13. Why? Because we're adding the tribe of Levi. But it still shouldn't be 13. Why? It should still only be 12. Because we know that Ephraim and Manasseh, which are now considered two tribes, are going to unify. They're going to become one tribe of Joseph. So even though we're throwing Levi into the mix, but we are extracting one because we're taking two and we're merging them into one. Ephraim and Manasseh, the two sons of Joseph, will become back one tribe. So you're still with 12. So why? So the Talmud says, who's going to have the 13th portion? It's not a 13. So the Talmud answers, that's going to belong to Mashiach himself. That's Mashiach's portion. That's going to belong to the king, the Nasi. He's going to have a 13th portion. Now we understand what's Mashiach. Mashiach, his soul contains, and he is the facilitator of this infinite light, of the higher godliness, of the unity of all of creation. The word, it's actually, when Rambam talks about it, he says the 13th portion is going to belong to the Nasi. Nasi, which means simply, it means the king or the leader, but the real meaning of the word is Nasi, the one that is higher, elevated. Nasiut means from the word elevated. Mashiach's soul is that elevated consciousness. So in addition to Mashiach being able to teach each and every one of us in accordance to our capacity and according to our detail, Mashiach will also bring down the infinite light, in which is bigger and higher than everything, and that's going to be revealed in creation itself, the higher level of the Aleph. In that sense, the Rebbe, I skipped a list of one important point. When we say that the Kamaim Layam Achasim, that the waters are going to cover that the knowledge is going to cover the world, like the oceans cover the water, he says that's because it's going to be revealed the godliness that's higher than the earth. It's going to be the knowledge of God in its purity, not knowing God in accordance to our capacity, but knowing God as God is, not according to our capacity. That means knowing the Torah as the Torah is God's wisdom, not the Torah as it lowers itself down into human minds and human thinking, but human Torah as it is completely divine. And when we reveal this level of Torah in the world, what does that do? What does that do? It reveals that all of creation, literally, all of creation is nothing other than an expression of the divine mind. Now, instead of feeling within the creation, a creation, we will feel in the creation that the creation is just a masterpiece. It's a thought of God. It's a divine idea. It's a divine brilliance. That's what we will see. In that sense, you're not sensing pieces. You're sensing one powerful, infinite idea. That idea obviously contains within it all the billions and billions of creatures and beings that are all part of that idea. But it's one idea. That's the idea. That's the higher level of light that is going to be revealed when Mashiach comes. Like the Rambam says, in all the way, Maimonides says at the beginning of his book, Maimonides says the foundation of all foundations and the pillar of all wisdoms is to know that there is a primal being, and all beings don't come into being only from the truth of his existence, of his beingness. Which means to sense that primal being, who's the beingness of everything, and that is the being of all, is the being of him. And when we sense that in creation, that will redefine everything we have and everything that exists. Now, so the Rebbe says, only the Rebbe can see this. He says, now we'll understand why Yeshua sent a Levite into conquer the land of Israel. Because Joshua, even though he was taking in the Jewish people for the first time thousands of years ago, he has his eyes on the ultimate prize. He's already thinking about Messianic times. Even though it wasn't the time yet to do the division as it's going to be in the future, even though we have to work our way step by step. This division of the land is only going to be by 12 tribes. But Yeshua is already sensing the ultimate conquest. And therefore, he's throwing a Levite into the mix to go, even though Shevet Levi is not allowed to participate in the conquering. They weren't allowed to go to war. They weren't allowed to take the spoils of war, and they weren't allowed to get a portion in the land. That's true. But he wanted to put again, God instructed him, but he put a Levi in there so that it can already hook up with the future redemption. So even back then, there was already a beginning. It started already the ultimate redemption, the ultimate taking of the land of Israel. Based on all of this, we can also see, understanding that these are the difference between Moshe's spies that we discussed earlier and Joshua's spies. Moshe, we discussed earlier, will also understand why the conclusion of Parsha Shlach ends with the mitzvah of tzitzis. As we spoke about in the first class in this episode, the Parsha Shlach, class number 1. Now this is class number 4. But in class number 1, we pointed out that Parsha Shlach is unique in that it highlights unity. We discussed this idea that the whole Parsha is one theme. And in the end of the Parsha, it has a mitzvah, which is the mitzvah of tzitzis, the fringes. And we discussed that the mitzvah of tzitzis stands out from all the mitzvahs, that all the mitzvahs are equivalent to the mitzvah of tzitzis. The mitzvah of tzitzis is equivalent to all the mitzvahs of the Torah. Like it says, when you will see them, you will take your tzitzis, and you will look at them, you will remember all the mitzvot of God. And we'd explain why, because the word tzitzis is numeric value 600. And then when you add 8 strings, you have eight strings over here, and then you add the 5 knots, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you got the 5 knots, you had 613. So the Torah says, remember the tzitzis. So the question is, why is this? So what's so special about that? What's the idea? But now we're getting to understand it. We spoke earlier that the Torah has within it these 2 elements. Since the Torah is meant to descend into the world, fix the world, elevate the world, connect all aspects of creation to God, since creation is created in a manner of division and separation, since the creation itself is initially fragmented, separated, and each one is its own thing, so the Torah has to descend into the pluralistic element of the world. And that's why in mitzvahs there are many mitzvahs, 613 mitzvahs. Each mitzvah has its own character, its own design, its own application. It applies only in a certain time of the year. Some mitzvahs are bound to a certain time of the year. Other mitzvahs are bound to certain circumstances that sometimes happen, sometimes don't happen. Mitzvahs are very detailed and specific. And we said that all the mitzvahs are really part of one Torah. Where do you see the unity? Oh, wait, but we also explained, hold on. That's one side of the Torah. One side of the Torah, let's put it this way. The side of the Torah that's facing the world is detailed and PC, which is 613 commandments. The other side of the Torah that's facing God, facing the origins where it's come from, on that side you sense unity, oneness, because it's coming from a singular being, an indivisible being, which is God. Where do you see that? We said in the Torah itself that there's two parts. There's unity in Torah and there's pieces in Torah. So we discussed, number one, every letter of the Torah is an individual letter. You can't take a bunch of ink and just spill it out, and it's just, if the letters are connected, it's not kosher. That means you have to give each letter its own space. On the other hand, the Torah is only kosher if it has all the letters, every single word, missing one. That means it all has to be one. It all has to be on one parchment that is put together, sewn together as one Sefer Torah. So you have the unity and you have the specifics in it. But we mentioned earlier that Torah itself, meaning the ideas of Torah, over there you sense more the unity, that it's one Torah. Because what are you studying? You're studying God's mind, God's intelligence. In mitzvahs, you sense more the division, the pieces. So what is the chiddush? What is the novelty of mitzvah tzitzis? The novelty of mitzvah tzitzis is that even in the particular detail of detail, you're talking about a particular mitzvah that only applies to a garment, which is only a particular part of the world. In garment, only on a 4-corner garment. So it's one particular mitzvah, and you only do it by day. You're not supposed to wear tzitzis always at night. Again, I'm talking about strict halacha, not what we practically do, but it's a very specific, detailed mitzvah, one out of the 613. And yet this mitzvah, suddenly when you look at it, you remember all the mitzvahs. It's like we discussed the land of Israel. You can have one piece of land, and yet in that land you find something. You have a mountain, you have a valley, you have an orchard, you have a vineyard, you have a seaport. How does everything turn out in one place? It doesn't make any sense, but that's the way it is. So here you have a mitzvah of tzitzis that has all the mitzvahs in it. The Rebbe says, what? Hold it. Isn't mitzvah supposed to be specified and detailed and differentiated and particularized? So how do you have a mitzvah that has everything? The answer is, great, that mitzvahs don't just exist as mitzvahs. Mitzvahs are the mitzvahs of the Torah. Like God could have given us two separate things. He could have given us Torah, which is knowledge. In addition to this, he could have given us a separate book with rules, instructions. That's not what it is. Where do the mitzvahs come from? The mitzvot, all the commandments, come from the Torah. So even though the mitzvahs are commandment to us to deal with the world, by the virtue of the mitzvahs being mitzvahs of the Torah, the unity of the Torah infuses the mitzvahs also with unity. So that even in the most detailed of detailed mitzvah, you're connected to all the mitzvahs. Now, by all the mitzvahs, you don't feel it. You don't see it. But by tzitzis, it's this mitzvah with that idea, that one mitzvah contains the DNA of all the commandments, of all of the Torah. It's seen in the mitzvah of tzitzis. And from tzitzis, you're supposed to get that feeling regarding all the mitzvahs. That's why it says, you will see your tzitzis, u're'isam oisa, you will see them, u'zachartem, you will remember, as kol mitzvahs Hashem, all the mitzvahs of God. So there's 2 points. First of all, through tzitzis, you remember all the mitzvahs. But there's another point. You'll remember the unity of all the mitzvahs. Why? Because it says you'll remember the mitzvahs of God. Could have said, not mitzvahs Hashem. It says, Re'isem asisem es kol mitzvotai. You will see all my mitzvahs. In other words, how do you look at mitzvahs? We spoke earlier. The whole differentiation of mitzvahs, if this mitzvah is this and that mitzvah is that, is if you're looking at the commandment. If you're looking at the commandment, Every commandment comes to fix another part of the world. And that's why the mitzvahs are specified, detailed, because the different parts of the world are different. Each one needs a different application. Can't repair this with the method, with the same tool. You have to have a toolbox with all kinds of tools to fix all the different things. But that's when you're looking at the mitzvahs in terms of their objective in the world. You're looking at the commandment and the content of the commandment and what's its effect in the universe. But if you're considering the commander, when you're doing a mitzvah, it's not about I don't care what it is. I know it's your wish, God. I know you want this. Whatever you want, I'm doing. It's you. I want you. So it really doesn't make a difference if I'm dancing on Simchas Torah or I'm crying on Tisha B'Av. Wherever you are. If you're crying now on Tisha B'Av, I cry on Tisha B'Av. If you're dancing on Simchas, I'm dancing on Simchas Torah. If we're lighting Hanukkah menorahs, then we're doing that. If we're engaged in deep meditative prayer, then we're doing that. Wherever you are, God, I am. It's the fact that it's your mitzvah. Then you sense the singularity, the oneness in all the mitzvahs. And that's a much higher level of observance. A higher level of observance is that every aspect of life, you're sensing the oneness, the one source. Now, that doesn't mean you're not supposed to know the detail of the mitzvah, and you're supposed to recognize the individual repair that you're doing with this particular mitzvah. You're supposed to have both elements in your mitzvah. Because the mitzvahs, as they're facing the world, are various different tools to fix the various different problems and to elevate all of creation. And in that aspect, yes, it's best to know what the repair is so that you can do it well and know exactly where to put emphasis and so on and so forth. So you got to know the territory. You got to know the situation. But if you want to reveal in the world a much higher level of God, then you got to simultaneously go totally beyond that and know it's not about this or about that. It's only the fact that it's your mitzvahs. So tzitzis is that amazing mitzvah that brings the oneness into the individual, brings the whole into the specific. And that's why it fits right into the parsha of the spies. Because the spies, as we discussed earlier, 12 different spies, each one going to its own portion of the land of Israel. But yet we learned that when Moshe sent the 12 spies to go, it wasn't like the spy of Ruvain went to the territory of Ruvain, Shimon's went to Shimon. They all went to all the places. Why? So that the conquest could be done with everybody together from a place of unity in each individual place. In other words, you can sense every mitzvah in the one mitzvah you're doing. So what the Rebbe is really saying that every mitzvah you're doing, you should be doing all 613. You might only be doing one mitzvah right now. You're delivering groceries to an elderly person. You're doing one particularized kindness. But while you're doing this, you're really doing all 613. Because you're connected to everything and to all of it. Because you're just completely surrendered to the commander who is commanding you on it. And that's what's overtaking your consciousness at this moment. And therefore, you're bringing in so much of a higher level. You're not just filling the vessels with godly light. You're flooding the world with the universal light that is going to unify all of existence. That's the idea that he's revealing over here. In that sense, we can understand why tzitzis follows the mitzvah of Shabbos, because it speaks about the man that was gathering wood. And we know Shabbos also equivalent to all the mitzvot. And the other mitzvah in Parshas Shlach is the sacrifice, the atonement for idolatry. So we mentioned earlier, idolatry is also compared to all the mitzvahs. If God forbid someone serves idols, as if he violated all the commandments. Someone violates Shabbos as if they violated all of the mitzvot. So you see that all the mitzvahs that are mentioned in Shlach are mitzvot, but they're also all inclusive. But the Rebbe says tzitzis is still unique. Tzitzis is much stronger than the others. Why? Because idolatry and Shabbat refer to are connecting to the oneness, because we are still standing in a level before the mitzvahs becomes. Because when the Torah is descending from one God into the plural, to deal with the plural aspects of the world, it first is in a state of unity and then it differentiates. So Avodah Zarah, believing in one God and not having idols and not believing in many that you're connecting to the singular essence of all of Torah and mitzvahs, but before the mitzvahs were divided. You're seeing the unity, but you're still on a level before they were divided. The beauty of Tzitz, and Shabbos is also, because Shabbos is above the world. The beauty of Tzitzis is, even after you've descended into the detail, into a very particular mitzvah that is only in one particular aspect of creation, dealing with one particular purification, you're using one particular tool in your toolbox in a specific screw that can only be tightened with this screw. Even here, you're sensing it all. You're connecting to all. That's, I was discovering the oneness even in the tiniest detail. Like we find today, that we find in one tiny hair molecule, we have the DNA of the entire person. That's the point. To find in the tiniest particular tissue of one particular organ, to find there the whole body. All of it. That's unique about tzitzis. Based on all of this, the Rebbe says, what do we learn from this? What's the bottom line? What's the takeaway? The takeaway is that even when I am doing my as a preparation for Mashiach, the Rebbe says, very important. Even when I am busy with something particular that I need to do, that I'm the only one who should be doing this, could do this, a particular, which I feel, now it's my own space. I'm doing my own thing. I shouldn't disconnect from others. I should remain connected to everybody. And when I see other people doing work that is only, it's their particular work, yet out of love to another person, I should see how much I can assist you in doing your work that you need to do as you, not as me. But still, I want to help you because I want to be connected in what you're doing. And also your private business, the good business that you're doing, I should feel that it's my business as well. We should all be there. Every mitzvah that someone is doing, everybody should gather to help them in their support. Whatever, I don't have the talent because I don't have the surgical hands that God gave your soul to do this particular surgery. But you know what? We're all standing by and applauding and assisting you. We're all there in the particular work that you're doing. That's the message. Our unity has to be found even when we are doing most specific types of tailored work for each. See, there are certain things that are communal to begin with. Okay. There's Shabbos, for instance. We all get together, Shabbos in one shul. We spend together. That's communal. It's inherently communal. But we're talking about when we're not in the communal work. We're in the specific work. And even in the specific work, we should find the unity. Therefore, the Rebbe says, for instance, I'll get a quick conclusion to this. He says, therefore, for instance, there is a division amongst the Jewish people. There are those who study Torah and those, the Yisachar Jews who mainly studies Torah, and those who give tzedakah. Their main work is to be the supporters of Torah. They're the merchants, they're the entrepreneurs, the business people. And their work is to give a lot of tzedakah. So the Rebbe says there has to be an interchange between the two. There has to be unity. In addition to the fact that people who study Torah also need to engage in kindness. And the people that are doing kindness also need to study Torah. But in addition to that, this is what I really caught me. The Rebbe says, when you are giving tzedakah, make sure to give not just for yourself, but give for everybody. Include everybody you're giving. So much so that he says people who have a lot of money and ability, when you're giving tzedakah daily, give a coin for every Jew that's alive in the world. Imagine that. Think about how many pennies would it be? How 14 million? How many pennies? How much tzedakah can I give every day that I can be giving for the 14 million souls that are in the world? My giving should be a giving of everybody. That's awesome. And he says the same as when you're learning Torah, don't be selfishly learning Torah. Teach others. Get everybody involved. Get the unity even within your specific purpose. Don't separate yourself. Don't feel yourself and the individuality. Know you're unique and you know you're special, that you can only do it, but still remain connected to the whole. And that's how we bring the wholeness, the oneness of God into everything. And primarily, the Rebbe says, through the spreading of Torah. And the most important is to spread the esoteric parts of Torah that we're doing right now, the deepest unified levels of Torah. Take that level of Torah and spread it to the crevices and corners of the earth. How? Through YouTube, through Facebook. Even on Instagram, sometimes it's so hard for me because I need to take sometimes deep ideas and give it in a minute and a half, and I go crazy. That's the whole point the Rebbe is saying. Get into the tiniest little slot of time and put the entire essence into it. Put everything into it. get the level of Torah that's beyond time and space, beyond the detail, and yet insert it, inject it everywhere. And by doing that, we fill the entire world with all of God, so to speak. And that's the Geula that brings us to the ultimate redemption, and so on and so forth. And the conclusion in chapter 14, he says, so it should be with us that instantly on this Shabbos, Pasha Shlach, let it be fulfilled what it says, that Hashem gave us the entire land, and also that we shouldn't give back even one portion of the land of Israel. L'chaim, everyone. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.